Hello, friends and beautiful people. On this Christmas weekend, it is Sunday support. It is December 27th, 2020. Tick tock, 2020 is going bye-bye. Adios. Vaya con Dios. Thanks for the hard lessons. And for some of the good ones too. It wasn't all bad. Hey, James. If there's, I always like to say there's a gift in the garbage, even in the most dire of situations when it seems like everything is going to pot. You can call it a silver lining. I call it the gift in the garbage. My gift in the garbage for 2020 was transparency. I really get to see in this year who my allies are and who are those folks that are not part of the intentional community that I am building. Hi, Hannah. I get to see the things playing out in the collective and the planetary timeline in very, very clear ways. And in that, being able to enact a level of discernment with a lot more ease than ever before, because I can see the players that I want to jibe with, and I can see the players in this reality play that I don't want to jibe with anymore. Gift in the garbage. So it is Sunday support, and I have something to share with you guys today that it's not going to be super long. I want to do the Sunday support talks fairly quickly, but brevity is not always my thing. I'll see what I can do. But this is a really important thing to talk about, because I created a post that I shared with you in the group and on my personal page. Into 2021 and beyond, intentionally build your community around you. Those sharing a similar vibration who band together with a mentality for the highest good of all, do so with the least amount of resistance. This is what creates a mass tipping point of consciousness and creates a consciousness shift. And in that, nothing exists in a vacuum. Whenever there's a consciousness shift, that means the old guard goes through a massive rift, a massive crumbling, a falling apart, a dissolving, however you want to say it. And as we come together and intentionally build communities where we have a like-minded goal of seeing that the highest and best good is delivered for all, and with the least amount of resistance for all involved, we are actively and aggressively creating a mass tipping point of consciousness and finding ourselves more and more in these intentional groups, meaning, perhaps I have so many altercations with this person, or I have these events or situations show up in my life because I'm no longer in that vibration. And maybe there's something about me that says this is who I am, and I'm trying to fight or argue for this old vibration that I previously occupied, but it's really not me anymore. And we're going to be called up to levels of discernment more and more as we go through this first 2 or 3 months of 2021. It's definitely going to be like a sifting through of a lot of different potential parallel timelines that we could be occupying. But are they serving our need to intentionally create the lives, deliberately create the lives that we are craving and asking for going forward? And we don't do it alone. We are being invited to see who the like-minded souls are out there and invite them into our community, right? Be a part of their community even. Invite ourselves into their community, however you want to do it. But we are as strong individually as we are as a group, as a unit, and we come together with a like-minded vision that we hold for this earth, that we hold for ourselves. This is where our vibration needs to be. And there's something really powerful when this happens. There's a little collateral damage, if you want to call it that, or collateral benefit. How about that? Collateral benefit of doing this, creating these intentional communities. Not only does it help to bolster our ascended field of consciousness when we are surrounding ourselves by people who are, not negative. They're not less negative than us. They're not poo-pooing everything. They're not a Debbie or Danny Downer around you every second of the day. But when we are intentionally choosing who we are creating a community around or inviting into our personal community, we bolster our own vibration, don't we? You know, because we're working with a different energy field of creation at that point. There is a negative field of energy creation. There is a finite, false ascension field, essentially, of the universal energy matrix. Because it's a universal law that everything has a equal and opposite. That's a law of polarity. But we have been creating from this negative creation matrix for a very, 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 very long time. And as we move higher up on this ascension timeline, we continue to elevate our consciousness field. A lot of these old structures are just naturally going to fall away because they're not supported in the vibration that we're moving into collectively. This is good. However, what happens with these old structures, these old paradigms, these old monuments, if you want to call them that, to misuses and abuses of power that have been on this planet for thousands and thousands of years, they ain't going to go quietly. No. They're going to put up a fight. Vibrationally, they're going to cast a wide net. Whoever even remotely wants to be paying attention to something negative, something that'll trigger people on an ego level, you know, and as these paradigms are dying out, there is definitely an upsurge of the ego personality, the ego self taking hold. This is true for all of us. Even those of us who have been on the spiritual path for a long time are not impervious to these moments of the ego going, wait a minute, what? No! Righteous indignation all over the place. How dare you? Blah, 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 stuff like that. None of us is impervious to that, okay? There's no one of us, unless you're a yogi, you know, up in the mountaintops of the Himalayas somewhere, impervious to the drama of the human ego structures. You know, you're not really going to fully transcend that yet, okay? We are getting there. But as these structures fall away, they're going to grasp and put out their feelers, cast a wide net for anyone who's even remotely paying attention to the darkness, to anyone who's even remotely paying attention or willing to play with polarity and contrast and shadow, okay? And it acts like a vortex, kind of wants to pull you in, and before you even know it, or before you even had a chance to think about your answer, your response, your reaction to something, you can get pulled into this vortex, you can get pulled into this matrix. That's why discernment is so important going forward. It's always important, but especially going into 2021, there's going to be a lot of energy vying for your attention. And the only way these old structures, the old guard, can continue to exist is through the powerful resource of the energy that you use to fund those structures or paradigms, okay? Because without our energy, no timeline can exist. Without our energy, no structure can exist. That is how we agree to a certain level of reality. And collectively, we've agreed to a certain level of reality where certain things have been at play. I'm not worthy. There's not enough. There's too many of us. There's not enough money, food, water to go around, all of these things that have made up a lack and scarcity consciousness. It's not real. It feels really real. It's a very pervasive and stubborn illusion, but it's not real. And in fact, here's a little nugget for you to chew on as you go into 2021. Anything that is not aligned with our spiritual advancement forward into elevated states of consciousness is part of a false ascension paradigm, is part of this false universal energy matrix that has been sucking life force energy from this planet, funded by humans for a very, very, very long time. And this is what is dying out. But it can only die out if you're willing to opt out of funding your energy towards that. And so the point, what I'm trying to get across to you guys here is that when you opt out of that, and when you're consistently opting out of the negativity and the darkness, and there's a lot of us who, yes, we're fighting the good fight, right? We're defending the light as much as we can. But some of us do that in a way where we're almost hurting ourselves more than we're helping ourselves by constantly pointing our fingers at the darkness and saying, there it is again, there it is again. Oh, you think I wasn't paying attention? There you are, I see you. Okay, let's unpack that. by consistently pointing your finger at the darkness and saying, there it is. If you want to call it the cabal, or, you know, whatever, black ops, whatever you want to call it, you know, the Illuminati, the things that have been these, sure, emblems and have been emblematic of power structures that are out of integrity on this planet for a long time. Yes, certainly, those things exist. And those who want to shut you up, the censorship, you not being able to say what you want to say, being shut down, okay? Well, if you want to keep playing that back and forth and you want to keep playing that game, it's always and ever going to be a give and take. So to the degree that you are funding this game, and it is a game, folks, that game will keep coming back at you. It's like a constant volley of tennis. It's just going back and forth over and over and over again. And if you really want to be impervious to those forces, you have to understand that maintaining an ascended field of consciousness is the best force field you can have. And we confuse that by sometimes calling out the darkness. That is not the same, folks. I'm sorry. And I know this is going to make some of you out there feel a little butthurt. I got to say it. And of course, my dear friend, Becky Gerard Schoonover, who wrote a post this morning that I woke up to when I looked at Facebook. It was the first thing that I saw. And this is what I'd been ruminating over the last 2 days. And of course, her post echoed what I was talking about here, or what I am talking about here, in such a way that, yes, when we, you know, put so much of our energy and attention, focus and drive, and we are funding, we're literally allowing these things to keep funding by keeping ourselves in a place where we're constantly recognizing this stuff over and over again and pointing the finger at darkness and saying, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. Well, you're not opting out of that world, are you? You're continuing to play the game with that level of reality, if you want to call it that. The ultimate defense system for repelling forces, ideas, people, events, situations that are in your exterior reality, that are part of the darkness or shadow paradigm, the shadow body of the earth, the shadow timeline of this earth. The best force field that you can have is constantly returning to love. And I know that sounds cheesy, but that's what it is. It's constantly returning to love. Your anger with the darkness is funding it. You feeling a constant need to point your finger at it and, you know, find out where it is, find out what it's doing this week, is funding it. Okay? Writing post after post about it, talking about how you're being vilified by this social platform and the other platform. You're funding it. Sorry, not sorry. There are many people, beings, entities that have already chosen on a soul level not to ascend. Okay? Including, you know, those beings who are, yes, maybe playing the victim perpetrator game, this ping-ponging back and forth that I'm talking about. There are souls who are agreeing to that level of contrast in this lifetime. So we can't mess with their free will, meaning we can't wake everybody up as much as we would like to. There are souls who have already decided, okay, or they're working through a karmic contract or agreement that they want to keep playing with the shadow, to keep playing with the contrast. So not everybody's going to wake up, okay? That was never the plan. That was never what was going to happen anyway, okay? And there are those who have chosen not to transcend the darkness. And there are those who have chosen beings, entities, and not all on this planet, many of them off planet, who have chosen to be the perpetrator on a soul level. Just because they're not humans and in our, 3D causal universe doesn't mean that they can't make those same kind of agreements where they call home, in other words, okay? And yes, a lot of those are the perpetrators of these false timelines that we're experiencing. I'm going to talk about false timelines in 2 days here in the group. You're going to want to tune in for that if you want to know what false timelines are, how they work, how they mess with our DNA, etc. But there are those who have chosen not to transcend the darkness. Okay? So you're not going to change their minds. You're not going to wake them all up. There are many who have chosen not to make that transition out of 3D Earth, out of even 4D Earth. And that's okay. That is okay. And for those of us who want to, understand that, yes, there is darkness. We don't want to be Pollyanna about this whole thing. Yes, there is darkness. There is some very dark, shadowy stuff at play. That's always going to be the case. We're never going to fully transcend or eradicate darkness. We'll transcend it to a degree, but we'll never eradicate it. What we're here to do is learn how to live above it. And by maintaining an ascended frequency field, and have that be your MO, have that be your default operating mechanism all the time, what you do at that level is you kind of become invisible to those who are the perpetrators of the darkness. Because you've opted out of that victim-perpetrator kind of divide and conquer timeline, which is one of the many things that are fizzling out here on this planet. I mean, yes, we have to see and understand the darkness before we can transcend it. And we have to process our own shadow. We have to process our own darkness before we can live at a level above it. That's always and ever the case. But your task, if you're truly, truly desiring to keep working those steps of ascension awareness, to keep ascending into elevated levels of consciousness, you have to realize that your task is to live at the highest level of love that you possibly can. Because that's the best force field there is to make you impervious to the darkness and the shadow games that are being played. And there's many of them being played on this planet right now. Operating at the highest level of love that you possibly can, it allows you to, again, create intentional communities around you. So you're floating literally in a different orbit, okay? So this goes to the idea that, becoming psychologically and vibrationally invisible, what does that mean? So now that we are here at the end of 2020, many of you are noticing that you are starting to live at a different level of reality than maybe everyone else around you. Give me some hearts if that's true for you. For those of you who are here, hi Nicole, I can't see everybody who's here. But give me some hearts if that's true for you. You are really starting to notice now. And you're starting to be in that level of discernment where you really feel like you're living at a different level of reality. Your reality is starting to become very different than the reality of those around you. Okay, maybe even those closest family members and friends that you've had for a very, very long time. And you may not feel like you're on people's radar anymore in the same way. You're not in the same frequency orbit, okay? This is good. This is especially helpful to you going forward because it is allowing you to build intentional communities because you're at that level of discernment now where if you're starting to notice for, the objective level of observation for yourself, not in the subjective ego personality observation, because that's not really observation at all. But in the higher God self, sovereign aspect, observational vantage point of your life, you're starting to realize, yeah, I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. I'm not the same person I was at the beginning of 2020. Like, I feel like I'm in a different frequency. I have a different orbit. And in that level of discernment, just looking at your own life, it's a lot easier to see, well, who else out there that I'm meeting every single day who's in that same orbit with me? And there's just a knowing now. And if there isn't, it's coming. Trust me. That level of discernment, that knowing, that deep cellular knowing, it's there and it is unfolding for you. You have to trust it though. You have to trust it. But this is really helpful because this is going to allow you to see those people who are like in the same orbit as you, in the same, frequency spectrum. And you're going to say, yes, I want that person as my ally. I want that person on my team. I want that person defending the light with me. And they feel just like I do, that it's not cheesy to keep going to love. It's not cheesy or trite or, stupid to keep anchoring love and keep talking about love. This is the only way we're really going to transcend the darkness anyway, is if we keep returning to love. And a lot of the darkness, a lot of the structures that hold this dark energy in place, they're actively dissolving, but it doesn't necessarily elevate anyone's frequency. Even those who, identify as light bearers, way showers, defenders of the light, it's not going to elevate your frequency anymore to keep saying, there's the darkness, there it is again. Oh my God, can you believe it? And then your intentional community then is those people who are going to commiserate with you. And it doesn't feel good, does it? It just doesn't. And it feels wrong and it feels off. And the reason is because you're funding the darkness, even though you may convince yourself that you're defending the light. And the reason why you are convincing yourself of that is because you're an ego. Okay? I'm going to give you a great example here. And I'm going to talk about vibrational invisibility a little bit more in a second. But, you see a lot of posts, and I've created a post in my Global Acceleration group about this, that, there's so-called, 90 Arcturian councils that people are channeling. But then in the channeled message, they're talking about the cabal, or they're talking about black ops, or they're talking about Trump. No. What you're signaling to me is that everything you're saying smacks of ego. And that's not a pure channeled message. Because if you're talking about any beings that are part of even 70 and beyond, let alone 90, they are not in the density that we are in. They are compassionate witnesses of the contrast that they're playing with. The actual players are incidental, so they're not going to call out Trump or the cabal or all that other stuff. That's not a true channeled message, because it's that person's ego beliefs filtering through. Okay? And we have to move away from that. We have to have that level of discernment too. Again, focusing on the darkness, funding the darkness, okay? When you stop funding the darkness and you agree to be a defender of the light, and you are anchoring in love and you're returning to love, every single deed is mired in what is the God choice here, in what I want to think, in what I want to say, and what I want to do. And the God choice, I talk about it a million times in here and in my Timelines class, that which is aligned with your highest good, aligned with the highest good of all, and with the least amount of resistance for all involved. That is the God choice. If you keep asking yourself and using this prompt for yourself in all of your deeds and endeavors, you are returning to love. Because you're always, when you are going to the God choice and asking, what is the God choice in this situation? You are perking up the ears of your higher God sovereign self, and the ego self is falling away. The ego self doesn't have any dominion over answering what the God choice is. It has no idea what you're talking about. But the higher self does, your God sovereign self does. And it's from that vantage point that you're going to make the choices in all of your deeds, endeavors, actions, what you'll say, what you do, how you react, how you respond to your exterior reality, okay? This is what makes you invisible to whatever you want to call them, the darker shadow forces that are at work and at play here on this planet and vying for your attention, hoping so much that you'll forget who you are as your God sovereign self for just a second. So it can say, oh, look, squirrel. And you can look away and put your energy there, and you can fund yet another structure, paradigm, some kind of monument to their darkness. But are you really that person anymore? If you're that one here who is saying, you know what, I feel different than I did at the beginning of this year or 6 months ago or whatever, I feel like I'm in a different frequency, don't you want to maintain that? And so maintaining an ascended field of consciousness is the best force field that you can possibly have. And what it does is it makes you psychologically and vibrationally invisible to those darker forces, because you have jumped to a frequency spectrum that they don't occupy. So it's like they don't see you. You are not on their radar. You're not occupying the same orbit. And this is true for those who are perpetrating these darker structures and allowing them to continue and trying to find new ways to insert their technology into our ascended timeline. But it's also true of those beings who have decided, remember I talked about those who on a soul level have already decided they're not going to transcend this darkness. They've already decided on a soul level they're not going to ascend. That is okay. But we can still hold space for these brothers and sisters in love by maintaining love, because what is the God choice when we come to that realization? That these people are not going to make this jump. They're not going to make this frequency shift. They've already decided on a soul level that they have another contrast to that experience that they want to explore in this lifetime. We bless them. We bless them. We send them love. We don't have to get pulled into their orbit. And the second you send them love and saying, well, why won't you? The second we send them love, instead of saying, God, what's the matter with you? The second we send them love and bless them, instead of being, but don't you know you didn't read this? Or didn't you read this? Or didn't you hear that? Do you see the difference between you being in your God sovereign self and you being an ego? And do you see how you're playing the old game? When you start to ask why, or you start to be like, well, why is this person different than me? Why is this person other? No. This person is not different from you at all. They're just making a different soul choice that they already decided was going to be their level of contrast or exploration in this lifetime. Bless them. Bless them. Stay in your own frequency lane, right? Stay in your own orbit. And pull those people into your orbit around you by creating intentional communities going forward into 2021 and beyond. Those people who are going to help bolster and expand that light to the point where we have a mass tipping point of consciousness. Even if we hit 51%, we're winning. Well, and the light has already won in terms of everything is now, and all parallel timelines are happening simultaneously, and now the light has already won. So we get that going for us, which is nice. So does this make sense? This is what makes you invisible. Here's an example. And this has been debunked, but I don't think so. I don't think that this is incorrect to say this, and it makes perfect sense to me. When I talk about being psychologically and vibrationally invisible, when the native peoples first started to experience the Europeans coming to colonize their countries, and this is the Americas, this is Cuba, there are other places in the Pacific Islands as well. Magellan, Captain Cook, the story changes depending on the explorer and depending on the place in the world. But these native peoples who had never seen a ship before saw the ships, or saw something on the horizon that they couldn't explain. Maybe they thought they had light spots in their eyes, but it's documented that until these sailors, these European explorers, hit the shores of their place of residence, their islands, they didn't see them. They were in a different vibrational frequency. They were in a different filtered level of perception, okay? And just like these native peoples had a different, very filtered level of perception, they were saying the same things day in and day out. And sure, these are people that had ability to, spiritually astral travel, if you want to call it that, a remote view different things, and maybe saw some outlandish things. But maybe they never had an experience of imagining a ship, a big warship or vessel on the ocean. And so they were not in a vibrational frequency to be able to receive that, to have it land with them in their five senses, to say, oh, this is here. And this can happen a lot with those of you who are holding a super high vibration, and you have someone in your exterior reality who is in a completely different vibration than you. They may not even notice you, and they probably won't. They'll have maybe a feeling or an inkling that there's another human there, but they won't have the vibrational wherewithal to be in even the same frequency spectrum where they're picking up on who you are. I can't snap my fingers. I want to. There we go. Does that make sense? It's like when you also, those of you who work with archangels, let's just say, or ascended masters. I mean, you may often have a sense that there is a presence there, or maybe some of you out here are trance mediums. You have maybe other skills, other clairs that are a lot more refined than clairvoyance, let's just say. And so maybe you have a sense of hearing or a sense of feeling or knowing that an entity or being is there, but it doesn't fully materialize because it's operating at a different dimensional frequency. Get it? The same thing is happening here, because we are going through a massive frequency shift right now. This is happening, okay? And so you can either ride the wave of that frequency shift and say, wee, I'm going to keep elevating my frequency. I'm going to keep elevating my ascended field of consciousness. I'm going to play along with this and I'm going to be on this ride. But you're going to notice that you're just not on people's radar anymore. And you've literally become psychologically and vibrationally invisible. So I wanted to share that with you because this is a good gift. This is a good gift. And it doesn't mean, I mean, it comes with a caveat that it doesn't mean that you're not still playing with some level of darkness, or that you are immune from doing your own shadow work and seeing what needs to be cleared within you. Because that's how you keep elevating your ascension field, isn't it? You keep clearing out the debris. But the more that you keep returning to love, the more you keep asking, what is the God choice? You'll find that when these levels of shadow come up, they don't trigger you as much because you're not so much in the ego personality and that level of vibrational density anymore where it hurts you so much that you'll kind of just notice it and being like, oh, isn't this interesting? Okay, this is something that needs to be cleared. I need to see where this has got tethers in all parts of my life. Where is it affecting me financially, socially, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, right? So I always choose the best cashier, how I get great parking spaces. See, these are everyday practical tools. How my experience of life is more joyful. Yes, Nicole, absolutely. I mean, none of this excuses us from seeing the shadow, because we have to see it and understand it and work with it before we can transcend it. And that is doubly so when it comes to our own shadow. And there's going to be more. And I know some of you are like, oh my God, I've done so much shadow work, so much purging and releasing this year. Well, you're not done, folks. But the good news is, if you keep returning to love, if you keep asking, what is the God choice? If you keep dedicated to your commitment to constantly elevating your ascension frequency, your force field that is unfuckable with, pardon my French, those triggers get less and less difficult to deal with. And then it's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to deal with this today. This came up. This is pretty obvious. I'm not going to deny it anymore. And you're also more likely to deal with it because it's easier to deal with, right? If you feel like you have to go into therapy for 7 years to deal with something, and I'm not trying to be glib about people who are definitely dealing with some very, very difficult things right now. I understand. But it is your commitment to returning to love that allows this journey to go by a lot quicker and feel more seamless and to feel very aligned with your path. Your own shadow is aligned with your path. It's not there to thwart your path. It's there to help you grow beyond the shadow, to live above the darkness, okay? So it should never be denied. It should never be suppressed, okay? There's always that gift in the garbage. Shadow is a gift. Yes, absolutely. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. And I did touch on false timelines for a second. So All Things Ascension episode 4 is going to be on December 29th, which is in 2 days. It's going to be in my Global Acceleration of Ascension group, which if you're watching this live, you're already in here. So aces, good on you. It is going to be at 1 p.m. Pacific time. MYOB. Mind your own business. Exactly. Yes, it is going to be 1 p.m. Pacific time. All Things Ascension episode 4. I'm going to be talking about false timelines and the DNA and collapsing the 2020 timeline. We're going to collapse some divide and conquer timelines. We are going to collapse some powerful structures that still have their hooks in us and our tethers on us. And the more people who join us live, the more collective energy, the more of an intentional community we build, And we have a better shot at tipping the mass consciousness towards more love on the planet as we go to 2021. So if you can join us live, that's fantastic. As always, the replay will be here in this group, or it will also be on my YouTube channel. So love frequencies always see me through. The love frequencies will never, ever let you down. And that's truth. All right. Mwah. Love and peace, guys. Bye-bye.